What if I told you that one of the world's most famous foods has a name that confuses millions of people? Every year, countless people eat corned beef, see the word corned on the label, and naturally assume it has something to do with corn. After all, the name seems pretty clear. Corned beef must contain corn, right? Surprisingly, it doesn't. Not even a little. In fact, the real reason corned beef is called corned beef goes back hundreds of years and has nothing to do with the yellow vegetable most of us think of today. The story involves giant grains of salt, food preservation before refrigeration, international trade, and a piece of food history that most people have never heard. Once you learn the truth, you'll never look at corned beef the same way again. Welcome to Consumer's Choice Top 5, where we uncover the hidden stories behind everyday foods, reveal surprising facts, and help you understand the products you use every day. Today, we're solving one of the biggest food mysteries in the grocery store. Why is it called corned beef if there's no corn? The answer is fascinating, and by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where the name came from, how corned beef was originally made, and why the name survived for centuries. Before we get started, take a second to like this video, subscribe to Consumer's Choice Top 5, and tell us in the comments. Before watching this video, did you think corned beef actually contained corn? Be honest, we'd love to know. Let's start with the obvious question. If corned beef doesn't contain corn, then what does the word corned actually mean? The answer takes us back to a time long before refrigerators, freezers, grocery stores, and modern food preservation. Hundreds of years ago, keeping meat fresh was a major challenge. Once an animal was slaughtered, people had to find ways to stop the meat from spoiling. One of the most effective methods was salt. Today we think of salt as something we sprinkle lightly on food. But in the past, salt was one of the most valuable commodities in the world. It preserved food, supported long-distance travel, and allowed people to survive through harsh seasons when fresh food wasn't available. Large quantities of salt were packed around meat to draw out moisture and prevent bacteria from growing. Here's where the word corned comes in. Several centuries ago, the word corn didn't only refer to the vegetable we know today. In older English, the word could also mean a small grain or particle of something. Large crystals of salt were sometimes called corns of salt. When beef was cured using these large grains of salt, it became known as corned beef. In other words, the beef wasn't mixed with corn. It was preserved using large salt grains called corns. This is one of those language changes that confuses people today because the meaning of words evolves over time. Modern English speakers hear the word corn and immediately picture yellow kernels on a cob. But people centuries ago often used the word differently. The original meaning survived in the food name, even though the common meaning of the word changed. Think about how language changes in other areas. There are many words and phrases we still use today, even though their original meanings have faded. Corned beef is one of the best examples of this phenomenon. The name stayed the same, while the meaning of the word corn changed around it. Now that we know where the name came from, let's look at how corned beef was actually made. Traditional corned beef production involved covering beef with large amounts of coarse salt. The salt pulled moisture from the meat and created conditions that made it difficult for bacteria to grow. Sometimes additional ingredients such as sugar and spices were added to improve flavor and preservation. The curing process could take days or even weeks. During that time, the salt slowly penetrated the meat, changing its texture, color, and flavor. The result was a product that could last much longer than fresh beef. This was incredibly important before refrigeration existed. Imagine living hundreds of years ago. There are no supermarkets, no refrigerators, no freezer section. If you wanted meat available throughout the year, you needed reliable preservation methods. Corned beef became one of the solutions. As trade expanded across Europe and beyond, corned beef became increasingly important. Ships traveling long distances needed food that could survive weeks or months at sea. Fresh meat would spoil quickly, but properly cured corned beef could last much longer. This made it valuable for sailors, soldiers, explorers, and travelers. One reason corned beef became famous was its connection to Ireland. Many people today automatically associate corned beef with Irish culture, especially around St. Patrick's Day. But the story is more complicated than most people realize. Historically, Ireland became a major producer and exporter of salted beef. Large quantities were shipped around the world. Over time, Irish immigrants brought their food traditions with them, particularly to the United States. As communities adapted to new ingredients and circumstances, corned beef became strongly associated with Irish-American celebrations. Interestingly, the corned beef many Americans eat on St. Patrick's Day isn't necessarily identical to what people in Ireland traditionally ate centuries ago. The modern version reflects a blend of historical traditions and immigrant experiences. At this point, you might be wondering whether corned beef is still made the same way today. The answer is both yes and no. Modern production methods are far more advanced, but the basic principle remains the same. Salt still plays a central role in the curing process. Today, manufacturers often use carefully controlled curing solutions, precise measurements, and modern food safety practices to achieve consistent results. The goal is still preservation and flavor. The methods have become more sophisticated, but the core concept hasn't changed very much. Here's a question for you. If you had never heard the explanation we just discussed, what would you have guessed? Would you have assumed corned beef contained corn? Many people do. In fact, it's one of the most common food misconceptions. Food names can be surprisingly misleading. Consider other foods whose names don't tell the full story. Sometimes names survive from older traditions, older languages, or older production methods. Corned beef is simply one of the most famous examples. Another interesting fact is that different countries have developed their own versions of corned beef. Depending on where you live, the product may look, taste, or be prepared differently. Some versions are sold fresh and cooked at home. Others are canned and ready to eat. Some are heavily seasoned. Others focus on a simpler flavor profile. Despite these differences, they all share the same historical connection to salt curing and the original meaning of the word corned. Let's talk briefly about canned corned beef, because it's familiar to millions of people worldwide. Canned corned beef became popular because it was convenient, affordable, and had a long shelf life. For many families, it became a pantry staple. During difficult economic periods and wartime shortages, canned foods often played an important role in providing reliable nutrition. Even today, canned corned beef remains popular in many countries. People use it in sandwiches, breakfast dishes, stews, rice recipes, and countless other meals. Yet many consumers still don't know why it's called corned beef in the first place. The fascinating thing is that the answer has been hiding in plain sight all along. The word corned isn't describing an ingredient. It's describing a historical preservation method. Now let's clear up another common misunderstanding. Some people believe corned beef must always come in a can. That's not true. Fresh corned beef brisket is widely available and especially popular during certain holidays. The canned version is simply one variation of a much older food tradition. Others assume the curing process automatically makes the meat unhealthy. Like many foods, moderation matters. Corned beef can be part of a balanced diet, but consumers should pay attention to factors such as sodium content and serving size. Understanding what a food is and how it's made helps people make informed decisions. As we begin wrapping up, let's quickly recap the mystery. Corned beef contains no corn. The name comes from an older meaning of the word corn, which referred to small grains or particles. Large crystals of salt were called corns of salt. Beef cured using these salt grains became known as corned beef. The name survived for centuries, even as the meaning of the word corn changed in everyday language. It's a perfect example of how history, language, and food can intersect in unexpected ways. What seems confusing at first actually makes perfect sense once you understand the historical context. So the next time you see corned beef in a grocery store, on a restaurant menu, or in your kitchen, you'll know the real story behind the name. It's not about corn at all. It's about salt, preservation, and a fascinating piece of food history that has survived for generations. If you enjoyed uncovering this food mystery, please like this video, subscribe to Consumer's Choice Top 5, and share it with someone who has always wondered why corned beef is called corned beef. And before you go, answer this question in the comments. What food name has confused you the most? We'd love to feature some of your answers in a future video. Thanks for watching, and please check out our previous videos.